clinic at that point was set in the law school dorms, which had been converted into a clinical office. And we were so cramped all in one room, all using a phone, sharing space, sitting on tables. It's really great to see this new facility. It's a whole different world. I loved the theoretical discussions of the rest of law school, but to actually be able to come in and meet a client and interview a client and draft a complaint took a lot of the mystery out of what it was to be a lawyer and was invaluable. And one thing I remember was some of the ethical discussions that went on among students, that we sat there and discussed very real issues about how you represent clients and choices you had to make and how much you influenced client decision making.
Going to the clinic, it was a client who had visitation and employment issues, not especially well educated, not especially rational about his issues because they're very emotional kinds of issues. And here was someone that really didn't care about the system. He wanted a result. And in the real world, that's the clients you end up getting. But that was the first dose of, here's a client who wants a result. I don't care how you do it. I know I'm right. And in addition to that, not especially well educated, in some cases not especially rational. And it was sort of like the great slap in the face of reality of, oh, this is what law practice is going to be like. But I think what impact the clinic had also on me was this sense of pro bono obligation, this sense that lawyers who have defined a system and control a system and set the rules of a system have an obligation as well. And that, I think, was something that the clinic gave to me that's not a direct impact on my business life, but a tremendous impact on my personal life.
And here at the clinic, I had the opportunity to do that from the first day. I had some very interesting cases. One of the cases I remember very vividly is a case involving a woman whose parental right, she was actually disputing, or was involved in a very tough custody dispute with her ex-boyfriend. And this was not your typical client. This is not the typical client that would walk in the front door of a big law firm. I would describe this woman came in, the first time I met her, she was in basically her full Harley Davidson regalia. She came in with her biker jacket on, her biker pants, full leather, the studs, and this is the first interview, and I'm sitting down to talk to this woman about how she's going to be able to regain custody of her child. It was a very interesting relationship from the beginning. She was a wonderful person, and once you got past the initial view and how a court or a jury might initially view someone by looking at their dress, you found out this was just a wonderful woman, a wonderful heart, and you could tell she had all the qualities that you would expect and you'd want to have in an outstanding mother. But we had to work on this visual thing, and I remember very vividly having to go to court for a procedural hearing, and I told her it was very important for us to make a very good visual impression with the judge that was handling the matter. So as we were preparing her for going to court, I said, the way you're dressed today really will not be appropriate for coming into court. We have to find something conservative for you to wear. So I'd like you to wear a very conservative dress. Just go into your closet, pick out your Sunday best type clothes, and come into court with those. I thought I'd said enough. And I thought that would explain to her what she needed. As it turned out, I was wrong. When she showed up in the court next day, she came in what was a very nice dress for perhaps going out on the town. But the skirt was extraordinarily short. The top of the dress was extremely low cut. And the best I could do was borrow a sweater from someone else in the courtroom, put that on her, and sit her down and tell her under no circumstances was she to stand up in the courtroom except when the judge came in and when the judge left. Otherwise, she was to stay seated on the bench and never get up again.
Even though I've only been out, a year, not even a year yet, that a lot of the problems I saw with most of the small business clients that I work with, I see with the clients that I'm working with now at a larger firm. So that's been very helpful to me. Although I haven't met that many clients in practice right now, it really has reduced the tension and the stress level. I feel very confident going into a client meeting, knowing what I need to do in there and what I need to accomplish in terms of getting facts out of the client or structuring things or organizing things. And I got all that from my training here at the clinic, really. It's a very small client, but I have had sole responsibility for that client. And the partner in charge of the case, and me, has just delegated that responsibility to me, and has confidence in me because she knows how I deal with the client. And with the supervisor in the clinic, you really had, with me at least, a mentoring relationship. And even to this day, I still keep in contact with my supervisor. In law school, we learn discrete subjects like torts, contracts, securities, whatever it is. But the thing you realize at the end of 3 years of law school is that they're all interrelated. And at the clinic, you have to put all these discrete areas together to help your clients. So, and that's what I found very, rewarding with the clinic, is that you could draw upon these different areas of the law and use that to help your clients. So to me, it was like an excellent capstone to my legal education.
My name is Jen Goldstein. I opened up a skate shop inside of a health club, and as you can imagine, I had a lot of different issues that I had to face: insurance and liability, and of course a lot of resistance. I didn't know where to go initially. I just wrote down all my concerns, and I was told, yes, I should try the small business clinic at the University of Pennsylvania. It was important for me to understand what the document said before I signed them and got involved, and hoped that that insurance would cover me when I needed it to, if I did. So I had a student in 1992 work with me and help me understand that, recommend that I become incorporated to protect myself. And of course, all those things seem quite overwhelming to somebody who has a business degree and wants to teach skating and introduce Philadelphia to the sport. And they were able to make it very simple for me. In every meeting that I had was followed up with letters to indicate everything that we had addressed and what we could do to help overcome those issues. It's funny because everybody told me I couldn't do it, but at the University of Pennsylvania Law School Clinic, they were able to say, these are the things that we have to do in order to protect you.
I'm Flora Barth Wolf. I'm a 1980 graduate of the law school. I was a retread when I came to law school in my 30s, and a member of the geriatric row. I guess it was for me my first experience of being the lawyer. It certainly was my first opportunity to actually interview a client and try to solve somebody's problem. And then, after I got elected judge, I sat in family court, and there I began to see clinic students on the other side, representing clients where there was an enormous need for lawyers and where students really could make the difference.
But one thing that sticks out about my experience while at the clinic was that it was when I felt as though lawyering really made a difference to the everyday life of people. Oh, I definitely look forward to the seminar every week. It was just fascinating to see how my different classmates, who I only got to really know them through the civil practice clinic. I mean, in our everyday classroom situation, I would have never have known anything about them. But during the seminar and actually getting the chance to see how they had their unique perspective on each case, I mean, I really came away with some good friends because I found out that we were more alike than I had previously thought.
I find that even the things that didn't appear to me at the time to be important to the mediation clinic, or that I thought of as small details at the time, are some of the most important things that I use every day. Things like where you should seat a person at a table to make him or her feel more comfortable. That's the type of thing that I read and thought, interesting fact, I'll never use it again, when in fact I use it every day. I think one of the most moving mediations that we had in my class was the case of two neighbors who had a tree growing between their houses. And at some point, one of the neighbors had tried to do some tree work on the tree, and the tree died. Well, this was about a 200-year-old tree, and I think one of the reasons that the other family had fallen in love with the house was because of this big, beautiful tree. And it sounds like, an accident, sorry, handshake, when in fact it became such a huge fight among the neighbors not just the two neighbors involved with this tree, but everybody on the entire block chose sides. People weren't speaking to each other. People were afraid to walk out of their houses. These neighbors, for example, couldn't look at each other. And they finally, the relationship had deteriorated to the point where they sued each other. In the end, I believe they both decided to pay. One was going to pay to have the tree planted, and the other would pay for some maintenance. They would hold a joint Christmas party so that the neighbors who had not been speaking for a year could all meet up together. The husbands and wives in both couples were there, all four of them. They were all crying, and you realize, gee, it's too bad they had to waste a year of their lives, but it's a wonderful outcome that sitting down at the table face to face and speaking with one another about the best ways to repair a relationship as opposed to a dead tree could be worked out. And that was the time when I realized just how important this is.
I'm Frank Lipsius. I'm publisher of Metro Kids magazine, which is a regional parenting publication. We were sued by a advertiser who felt that she didn't get the advertising she wanted. We were inside the room for a while alone, and then our adversary was inside the room alone for a while, and that was some back and forth where they were helping us resolve our own expectations and what we were looking for at the point at which we understood what the real issues were. And the third was drawing up the paper itself. In each of those issues, it was important to have the mediators there in order to help focus in on the issues that we needed to, and to get to the point where a quite simple one-page document on lined paper that was handwritten would satisfy everybody. An over 3-hour period over a rather small issue, I think that it was very important that they were patient, that they brought out the issues rather quickly, and it took us most of the time to understand that the issues themselves were less of a problem than trusting each other.
And just had magnificent opportunities to learn what it was like to work with clients and with real cases, and of course to go to court.
And to work closely with another lawyer. I think one of the really great joys of the clinic was that you got a chance to do a lot of one-on-one with another lawyer who knew a heck of a lot more about such things as civil procedure than you knew, and could make it come alive beyond the textbook and the lecture hall.
Mm-hmm. And at that time, we had one office, and we took turns.
One desk.
We had one desk, right, one chair.
Which was actually continuing in a tradition that we started in law school, which most people didn't know. We shared one set of books in law school, because we couldn't afford two sets, so we had to always negotiate as to which course we were going to take.
And there was one lunch.
One lunch,
One
that's
lunch
right.
back.
Half and half.
But in practice, we took turns sitting at the desk. When Bill had a client, then I would remove myself from the room and go do the typing that had to be done, since we couldn't afford a secretary. And so we did this for about 2 years.
Yeah, in many ways, I suppose it was like the clinic experience. A lot of the things that we did in those early days were very, very varied. And also, we focused a great deal on the kinds of things, the helping aspects of the law, which we still do. And I feel quite good that we've never lost that part of our focus.
I always thought that the genius of the way the clinical program was constructed at Penn was that, at least I never felt like I was being thrown into these situations that I had never dealt with or thought about dealing with all alone, and yet I always felt that when I was working the problems through, I was doing it all alone. And I think that the realities that made that true were the involvement of the clinical instructors without doing the work. They were I mean, I guess my analogy of what they would be like is they were sort of lifeguards with poles, and you were like a 4-year-old going into this swimming pool, and you didn't really know how to swim, and the water was about 3 inches over your head. I mean, so and they were standing there with poles, so you had a sense you were never going to drown, but they were going to let you go underwater a little while before they gave you the pole. And I always, I mean, sometimes I wondered when the pole was going to come because I was having trouble breathing, but I always thought that the balance was right in terms of when it is they came to your assistance.
As soon as we met, I knew that he was the guy that I needed to represent me, because he wasn't, you know, he needed to hear more and more and more and more. He was really interested. So we went to the first hearing, and I remember I was a nervous wreck. And if I was nervous, he must have been just as nervous. But, you know, he kept telling me, you just keep looking at me, and when I ask you the questions, you just look at me, and we've gone through this several times, and you know what it is that you want to say, and, you know, it'll be okay. So we went to the first hearing, like I said, and all I needed to know was that he was there with me, and when he asked me the questions, I forgot that everybody else was in the room, and we spoke, and I, you know, the judge then, you know, heard what it was, why I was appealing. So when that hearing was over, because then we had to have a second hearing, before we left the room, I remember the judge saying what a good job he had done on my case. I remember being really upset during the case, and every time I looked in his eyes, I knew it would be all right. I knew it was going to be okay. The decision was in my favor. And again, the judge said to him that he had done a terrific job. Oh, I was so proud of him. I was so proud of him, I really was.